Storyland is a quaint little theme park based on fairy tale stories in Glen, New Hampshire. As the sign out front says, where fantasy lives. Only open in the summers, it is a hot spot for families on vacation. And my family was no exception. And we held these memories as very special until one day, our father, at 60 years old, met his Cinderella there. A 21-year-old Russian girl who was a theme park worker for the summer. And he named her his destiny, even though her name was actually Masha. He left my mother after 36 years of marriage. He left my siblings and I. He left America. And it was mind-blowing for my siblings and I because who my father had always been was this Catholic patriarch, king of his castle, and we were his loyal subjects who did his bidding. There were some very clear expectations about who we were supposed to be. We were to be good. We were to reflect positively upon our family, and we were to follow his rules. So when my father met his destiny at Storyland and decided to break all of his own rules, cheating, lying, abandoning his commitments, leaving all respectable behavior behind, and jetting off to Europe, our minds were blown. For me, it was like someone had taken a grapefruit spoon and just scooped through the ventricles of my heart. I cycled through a hurricane of feelings: confusion, betrayal, sadness, anger. My friends who had divorced parents said to me, make sure you tell your father how you feel. I did. I really, really did. Everything I had ever wanted to say to my father as a child, but was too scared for fear of retribution, every pain, every rejection, every piece of anger that lived inside of me came flying out like a holy fire and just scorched the man where he stood. He was silent. That never happened. And then he was silent for many months after that because I pretty much destroyed our relationship. But what came out of this experience was that I realized I was liberated. This strong foundation that he had built was no longer mine to follow. If he didn't have to follow it, I didn't have to follow it. And so what I saw from the ashes of this whole situation was a possibility. And I particularly saw possibilities with Robin and David because we never felt close because we were so busy reflecting to my father and trying to be who he wanted us to be. And so I, as the emotional member of the family, thought this is a great opportunity for all of us. And so I went to my mother and my siblings and I was like, let's let the healing begin. It is time to do a cleanse of tyranny and figure out what we can create as a family. And they were like, no. Nope, we don't want to talk about it. They just wanted to back off into their own corners privately and process. And the more I pushed, the more I prodded, the more they retreated into their healing corners. Now, I didn't talk to my father again for a long, long time, and periodically he would reach out and make strange connections like, did you know this fun fact about Europe? Or guess who died? Does your father ever play that game with you? Guess who died? Yeah. And so I was just like, no, I kept him at bay. And then finally my mother said to me, look, I think it's time for the healing to begin, and I think you need to start with your father. So this is 5 years after he left. I wrote him an email, and I said, look, I think I'm ready to try having a relationship with you again. Here's what's going on in my life. He emailed me back quite quickly and started telling me about a person that I didn't know, a young boy who had been born sick, but was now a vibrant 4-year-old who loved skiing and football. His name was Nicholas, and he had the same last name I had. And I had to read the paragraph twice before I realized I had another brother, a secret brother. And then at the bottom of the email, he said, don't worry, I'll forward this on to Robin and David. Immediately, like my sibling alarm went off, and I pivoted quickly into protection mode. I called my sister and I said, Robin, don't open Dad's email. And she said, I already know. I've known for years. So then I called my brother, and David answered, and I said, don't open Dad's email. And he said, I know. I've known for a while. And I said, how long? And he said, 6 months. I said, how? And he said, well, I was Skyping with Dad and Nicholas walked through frame and I was like, who's that cute little guy? And my dad was like, funny story. And I felt so abandoned again, that my 2 siblings would keep this from me. And I said, why? Why didn't you tell me? And they said, Dad told us not to. And I was angry, livid, betrayed. And then it occurred to me, I don't think we have to do this his way. So I called my brother and my sister and I said, I love you. I love you so much. And I'm so sorry this is happening. But we need to pull together because the man who's writing our narrative left the castle and it's our turn to create something different. I want to be close to you. I want to be able to do this without his say. Call me, talk to me, tell me what's going on. Don't let someone who's not even here decide our future. That conversation changed everything with my siblings. Right now, I am closer with my siblings than I have ever been, except for one. I have a brother who is now about 11 years old, and he lives across the ocean in Europe. And someday he may come knocking on my door. And when he does, it's gonna be open. Thank you.